count in and we'll go.
Your go.
Okay. Roger, again, we're at a very special place, San Jose Country Club. As you've grown up here and been playing here for a long time. So let's talk about your career, please. All the things that you've accomplished as a player, as a broadcaster, and everything you've done for us as colleagues and fellow golf professionals. So there are some stories that are pretty famous. The 1975 at the Pleasant Valley, something about leaving without the check, and some great moments too. Some great moments too at the Masters.
I will say that was because I really think the world of Steve Mencinella. And Mensch might have celebrated that night too. So yeah, I won 2 tournaments in a row my rookie year, and the second one being in Massachusetts, as you mentioned. Had a good time that night. The next morning I woke up with no money in my pocket and no check. So sad but true, I got it back 40 years later. A couple of years ago, we were broadcasting the playoff tournament, the Deutsche Bank tournament in Norton, Massachusetts, not far from Pleasant Valley, where I won that event. And a golf writer went up there to play on Wednesday, the day before the tournament, walked into the pro shop, talked to the pro, and he said, this is the place where Roger Maltbie lost his check, right? And the guy says, yeah. He says, matter of fact, I've got it in my desk in my office. He said, what? He says, yeah, I've got it. He says, here, come in. Go in his office. He opens the desk. He goes, here's the $40,000 check. And the golf writer said, don't you think he'd like to have that back? Which, of course, I did. They gave it to me a couple of days later. Tried to cash it, didn't work.
So tell us about the Masters. Roger, tell us about the Masters.
Well, I was in '87, and in the mid '80s, I started playing some pretty good golf again. In '87, at the Masters, I shot 76 the first day. Went out late in the afternoon. The greens were really hard that week. Breezy, shot 76, played pretty good, I thought, but not a very good score. And the next day, I got to go out early and shot 66, which ended up being the low round of the tournament. So I kind of went from the bottom near the top. And so in round 3, I was paired with Curtis Strange in the final group and shot 70. And then Sunday final group, I was paired with Ben Crenshaw and birdied the 8th hole to take the lead by a stroke. So par 9, I wandered up on the 10th tee, and you know how they tell you the Masters doesn't start until the second 9 on Sunday? They ain't lying. There wasn't much oxygen on that tee. I gotta be honest with you. And you could feel the enormity of the moment. I certainly could. And I made a couple of bogeys and fell back. And then I birdied 17 to get within 1. And on 18, I hit as good a second shot as I could have possibly hoped for. And the hole being front left, I was trying to use the backboard behind it to have the ball come down toward the hole. And the crowd kind of went, ooh, and I knew what happened. It jumped and went on top of the hill. And one of the bad parts about watching the Masters every year since you're this big is, nobody ever made this putt. Right. You've seen them from front to back, but you've not seen them from back to front. Now it's mine. So I 2-putted and finished a shot out of the playoff.
Yeah. And Roger, you had success at the Memorial, a victory at the Memorial, which is always very special.
Yeah, and it was very much Jack's answer to the Masters. Right. Everything was done very similarly there, and we knew that it was going to be a tournament of importance, big importance, even that first year. And ended up being in a playoff with Hale Irwin, and we tied 72 holes at even par. That's how hard it was. The greens were fast. It was, for us back then, this was a real test. And Jack wanted to have a 3-hole playoff. That had never happened. He had to talk the tour into it, had to talk the TV into it, and they agreed. So after 3 holes, we were tied, and then I won on 18, the fourth extra hole. But on 17, I got one of the greatest bounces you'll ever know. I pulled it left to the green, and I thought, oh boy, And all of a sudden, the ball bounced on the green about 20 feet from the hole, and I was afraid that I'd hit somebody in the head or something to bounce out onto the green like that. And it ended up being a piece of rebar that held up the gallery ropes and the gallery rope stake. So, if you have any reflective side, you think about that. If I got there and I was 10 over par, how great a break would it be? Who would care? But when you get a bounce like that, when you need it most, and it helps most, that's pretty lucky.
That's amazing.
That's a pretty lucky break.
That's amazing. That's a great bounce.
Yeah,
That's a great bounce.
Oh, yeah. I've gotten a lot of bad ones too, by the way, but that was a really good one.
So you moved to commentator. You're known as the quiet commentator, then to get close to the greens. Do you enjoy that part of it, being out there? The game has changed.
I do. Interestingly, at the end of 70 or 87, after that Masters, I injured my shoulder, my left shoulder, and tried to suffer through it in 88. It didn't work, and so I had surgery on it in late 88. That didn't work so well. At any rate, the shoulder ended up that I could play, but not like I did at one time. There were shots I knew I couldn't play that I could before. Biggest problem being if I practiced much, if I played much, it would get inflamed and hurt. If I didn't play much, I could get through it, So NBC called me. I'd had a second surgery because the first one didn't work out, and they called me if I would help them with the broadcast at the Bob Hope tournament. And back then, there was no cable television. Networks did 2-hour coverage Saturday, 2-hour coverage Sunday. That was it. And as the Hope was a 5-round tournament, played over 4 different courses, they'd have a host course that they'd use on the weekend. The celebrities would play on Saturday, and then pros only on Sunday. Well, the leader could have been on another golf course, and they came up with the technology to have radio frequency, RF cameras, where they could satellite beam and all that, one thing and another, from another location. So they said, geez, would you do it? And I said, well, okay. And as it turned out, the leader was on Bermuda Dunes when the host course was Indian Wells. So that was my first exposure. But I said yes with the caveat that I wanted to be involved in the broadcast of the Ryder Cup. That year, 91, the War at the Shore at Key Island. And I said, if you let me do that, I'll do it, because I wanted to be there. And they said, you got to do it. I did that broadcast with them. And about 3 weeks after the Ryder Cup was over, they called me and offered me a job, which, I said, well, they were only doing 9 events at the time, so I could still play some and broadcast some. So I thought, I'll get my foot in the door. It just turned out that never spent a minute thinking about being in television, but as it turns out, I would have made more money, be more recognized from being a broadcaster than I was as a player. I mean, I had some success as a player too, but it's far outweighed my playing.
Well, we're glad you made that decision as well, Roger, right after negotiating for the 91 Ryder Cup, so thank you for that. And Roger, we had the chance to talk just before we got here. This is the 3rd class of Hall of Fame inductees for the Northern California PGA. And you know everyone that's in before you, as you mentioned, Gary Plato, Steve Mentionella, Eddie Duino, Sr., and such. And so, Roger, what does this mean to you and your family to be inducted at home here in Northern California into the Northern California PGA Hall of Fame?
Well, it's very humbling, and it's such a thrill from a few standpoints. One, being the 3rd professional from here to be in the NCPGA Hall of Fame. Eddie Duino, who was my only teacher growing up. Gary Plato came in the late 60s as an assistant to Eddie, and then ended up being the head professional for 20 years. I mean, these are the 2 guys that I would easily have to credit most with my development as a player, and hopefully in a lot of ways as a man. They both mean a lot to me, and to be held in that same regard is a high honor.
And well earned, Roger. Thank you. And your legacy continues, particularly here at San Jose Country Club, which has a great legacy in golf as well, as you mentioned, for all that have come before us and are yet to come. So, Roger, again, congratulations and welcome to the 2020 Northern California PGA Class Hall of Fame.